Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all very warmly to this webinar on financing bioenergy, challenges and success stories across end-use sectors. We have a great lineup of presenters today, and I'm sure you're going to have a very interesting view on the issues surrounding the financing of bioenergy projects. While you're joining us, let me suggest that you just shortly say hello in the chat and indicate from where you are, so we get a little bit of an idea of a flavor. Who is our audience? Where are you located geographically? And you can also get familiar with our chat function, because you will be able to use this function to come up with questions. We will have a Q&A session after each speaker, so you're able to formulate your questions, and we will pick them up and ask the presenters to answer them. Probably will not manage to answer all of them, but at least some of them. Fine. So I think we can kick it off. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Christian Rakosch. I am chairman of the World Bioenergy Association, and I would like to say a few words also about our association. We are a global organization, and we are dedicated to promoting sustainable renewable energy use with bioenergy. So that's the focus of our activities. What we are intending to do is we intend to contribute to sharing knowledge, to sharing information about technologies, about markets, about policies, about finance. We also provide platforms for companies to showcase their products, to come into contact with potential clients across the globe. We publish a lot of reports. You can find them on our website, and we are organizing regularly webinars as a way to make available excellent know-how from top-notch experts across the globe in the field of bioenergy and related issues. We do engage also in partnerships with a number of international organizations, such as the International Renewable Energy Agency, the International Energy Agency, FFFC, the climate agreement, etc., etc. So we welcome all of you who are interested to join our community. We are open both for associations, but also for companies to join WBA and benefit from our offers for our members. So far, a short introduction to our association, and now let's kick it off with our presenters. As I said, we have a really dedicated group of experts, and the first person to present will be Ash Sharma. He is Vice President of the Nordic Green Bank, and he will provide an overview of NEFCO's investment portfolio, focusing on bioenergy projects, and he will show you what NEFCO can do for initiatives in this field. So Ash, the floor is yours, and please share your slides, share your know-how with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
We can see it well.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much to the World Bioenergy Association for this invitation. I'll be talking, as Christian has mentioned, really to give some examples of what we are working with. Our main instrument is the Modern Cooking Facility for Africa. It's been running now for 3 years, and I'm very pleased to be able to share some of our initial findings. Okay, so it's an instrument that was launched in November 21. It's a multi-donor program which was established by NEFCO together actually with Sweden. So we co-created with Sweden with CEDA, and we're very pleased that the European Union and Norway have joined us in our endeavors. We have a program of around 62 million euro. So what we hope to do in very global terms, and here are just some large numbers, we want to really try to demonstrate the business case for sustainable businesses in the bioenergy and other clean cooking solution areas. So we aim to reach 4 to 5 million African beneficiaries. We hope to leverage at least 1-to-1 in terms of public financing, for private financing for the public financing that we provide. And we hope to do this through around 25 private companies that we will support. And as you can see, we have a range of other indicators that we want to work with to avoid deforestation, to reduce climate change impacts, and also to reduce black carbon as well. You can also see the SDGs that we hope to hit there. So how do we do this? We do this really by providing finance. So we have financial incentives, and our focus really is around market creation and supporting sustainable businesses. And the emphasis is really on providing flexible financial incentives, both catalytic grants, so non-reimbursable grant component, and results-based financing in the same agreement. So the idea here really is to support companies, to give them great agency over how they use the funds. So we don't specify what the funds should be used for. That is done by the companies themselves. They propose the milestones. They propose the use of funding because they know better the requirements than we could do, for example. Leveraging is very key to this. We focus very much on the sort of higher tier, the tier 3 to 5. So we don't work with the traditional biomass. We also try to encourage stove use monitoring, consumer financing, carbon finance. We'll touch on this later on. We also provide technical assistance, both in terms of business development support, but also carbon finance instruments. So what I'd like to do really is just very briefly to take you through the first round of funding that we've had. So we're about halfway through in terms of allocating our capital. We work with 13 portfolio companies in 6 countries. And here you can see the sort of numbers that we aspire to. We haven't reached these yet, but we've dispersed around a quarter of our funding to date. But the portfolios, I must stress, is at a very early stage of development. So these are the companies that we work with. You can see there's a very strong representation of bioenergy in this, both through solid biofuels, briquettes, pellets, and also through biogas. And you can see the companies here. I'm very pleased to see that one of our investee companies, Landforce, is on the call as well. So welcome to Victor and colleagues there. Okay, so I'll just run very briefly through the solid biofuel companies that we work with. In Kenya, we're working with ACE. They provide a gasifier stove using sugarcane bagasse. They work also with primarily with a consumer finance model. Like many of these sort of tool and fuel systems, they offer flexible payment plans. The other company we work with also very similar here is in Zambia. It's emerging cooking solutions, again with a gasifier stove. You can see the type of the type of equipment that is provided, and again a very nice tool and fuel distribution model using pay-go, using the stove use monitoring. And I think what's interesting about this is that they, together with the next company, are really monitoring exactly how much fuel is being used. So that kind of overcomes some of the challenges that we've seen in the carbon market. So carbon is a big part of many of these programs going forwards. And the third company we work with also in Kenya is Eco Safi, or the Better Cooking Company, which again uses locally sourced biofuels from sugar bagasse. This is a company which is also very active in the carbon market, has a very high profile, looking to use digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, and has been very much at the forefront of trying to drive up prices in this market. As many of you will be aware, there have been a lot of challenges in the carbon finance market due to cases of overcrediting and so forth. So the idea really is to try to support companies which will bring back some of the integrity in terms of how this carbon is monitored. Okay, I'd like to then just to highlight very briefly some of the biodigester programs that we work with. So we work with companies in a number of countries. Here I highlight NG Energy Access, which is working together with Good Farmland Management in Kenya, which is Sistema Bio, very active in this market, and they provide biodigesters with biogas stoves, again on a pay-go basis. And they're rolling out their program in rural and peri-urban parts of Mozambique. You can see here the, I guess, quite familiar system, the geomembrane bags that you get, which are very commonly used. We also have another company in Kenya, which is called Home Biogas Ventures. They focus very much on a smaller biodigester with accompanying peripheral equipment and a 2-burner stove, again using dairy farmers. And as with all these projects, you produce your own fuel as well. So you have a biodigestate, which can be used as a soil conditioner and fertilizer, as well as the fuel for cooking. And the third company we mentioned, Landforce in Zimbabwe. This is a female-led company which has been working to deploy these biodigesters in rural Zambia, and here we can see another very happy customer there. So what I'd like to do is really just to before I conclude, just to sort of highlight some of the key issues that we've seen in terms of these companies. As I say, they're at early stages of their development. From the solid biofuel side, I think some of the key challenges that we see for the companies that we work with really are very much operational, sizing and the timing of production, so that the products are ready to meet the market demand, to make sure that the capital is being used in the right way, and not being tied up in redundant or unused product which cannot be sold, or missing sales for lack of capacity. I think that's another issue. We also note that some of these companies are suffering, of course, from cash flow challenges. I think this is very common throughout the sector. I think in terms of negotiating, finalizing investment into the business has been challenging. And of course, in many cases, trying to get the early stage, particularly equity capital, has been quite difficult. In terms of the biogas, I guess many of these constraints are the same. We see that many of the companies are suffering with issues related to customer financing. As we know, we're often working with some of the poorest in the communities, but also trying to introduce pay-as-you-go models, trying to establish partnerships with local financial institutions. This is very, very challenging. Of course, working in underserved areas, geographically speaking, presents logistical challenges. We know there's infrastructure challenges in many parts of Africa. When you look at some of these countries, they're quite sparsely populated, and very large countries. Of course, you have some challenges there. Many of our investees have also mentioned awareness and education issues. Many are still unfamiliar with biotechnologies and the benefits, and trying to overcome some of the misconceptions has been a challenge. But our companies are working with these issues. Also, building trust is challenging. But overall, I think a key issue is, in terms of what we want these companies to do, really is to try to meet some of the ambition targets that we set them, and we want them to expand their businesses, but to do so in a sustainable manner, and of course trying to maintain high quality, also to try to recruit and retain good quality staff, training standards, and also importantly to have the high levels of customer service. I think are amongst the challenges that we have seen. So maybe I just stop there. I'm not sure if I had rushed through that, but I'll stop sharing now, and yeah, happy to take questions.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ash, for this overview. I would like to reiterate our invitation to our audience to submit questions in the chat. While you're thinking about your questions, I have two questions, Ash, and then one is, do you usually fund projects together with other funding organizations, or is it do you also take exclusive kind of exclusively care of your project? So are you usually looking for a broader portfolio of co-investors? And the other question is, we have quite a large audience today, people that are interested in realizing projects and are wanting to learn how to get funding from NEFCO in this case. What would you suggest them? How should they approach you? What kind of requirements do you have for projects that could become subject to cooperation with NEFCO?
Okay, thank you for those questions. I guess I'll answer the second one first. Unfortunately, we are closed to new applications. We are just to give you an update, we are now processing the second round of funding, which will be around the same size. So we hope to have probably around 12 to 13 more portfolio companies. We closed that round earlier on, and I just to mention I think there's a question in the audience. We don't have any plans currently for a third round, I'm afraid to say. In terms of co-investments, yes, we very much encourage other funding. In fact, what we want to do really is to mobilize more funding. So what we have seen in many cases is that, by entering into a results-based financing agreement with the Modern Cooking Facility for Africa, our investees are able to mobilize other funding, because this gives comfort to other financiers. So we are typically the only off-taker, if you will. So we off-take the cooking solutions that are being generated by our investee companies, but then we hope that they will mobilize additional financing as well, both in terms of equity and debt. So we do assess the companies in terms of, for example, at the beginning, that they should have some level of co-financing to begin with, so that we have confidence that they can grow and scale in the way that we would like them to do. But we also have additional funding which they will mobilize over the life of the agreement, which is 4 years. So we don't expect that they would have all the funding in place at the beginning. We hope that they will mobilize additional funding on the back of the funding that we provide.
And like in terms of if it doesn't apply to NEFCO, it will probably apply to other funding organizations. What kind of questions do you ask projects when they approach you? What are the key criteria for you to decide this is a project that makes sense that I would consider to invest or suggest to other donors to, or funding organizations to join?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, I mean, we still have the guidelines on our website, so people can still look at those and see what criteria we look at. And we have a scoring regime that we use, but I think that the main issues we look at in terms of the due diligence really is of course the management team, their experience. And we see a lot of good companies out there who are very active in this area, for example, who have traded up from some of the lower tier. So we look at experience in terms of rolling out these types of programs, particularly the last mile distribution. That's a very important issue. Of course, we look at the ability to raise financing, how much co-financing is provided at the beginning, and of course the business plan, which shows really how this can scale over time. We recognize that we are working with companies which are themselves working with some of the poorest customers. So we look very much at the financial management skills, particularly in terms of credit, managing credit, for instance. Many of the companies are working with PayGo. And increasingly, carbon finance skills are very important, because carbon finance is a real game changer, or it has the potential to be in this sector, because we see, even given the headwinds in the carbon market, that there's a lot of interest, particularly with some of these programs which tell a very good story. There's health benefits, there's very strong gender benefits, there's the avoided deforestation. So these are great projects, and we really want to see them get the funding that they deserve.
Thanks. You have just touched briefly on carbon credits, because there was also a question in the audience about the carbon credits. Do you see carbon credits recovering and becoming a more important contribution to projects after that kind of slump that we had with all kinds of issues regarding the value of actually claimed carbon credits?
Mm. Well, I'm pretty confident the market will recover. I think there are a lot of initiatives out there which are looking to promote higher integrity around this, trying to avoid the overcrediting issues. We've seen that many of our companies, for example, are looking to be more conservative in the use of baselines, also in terms of the metrics they use, like the FNRB metric, to try and bring that down, so that we get a much more conservative interpretation, really, of what carbon is being saved. And I think that when you look at some of the technologies out there, and this is very tech driven, when you look at the stove use monitoring technologies out there, you can get much closer to how often and how much fuel is actually being displaced. So I'm pretty confident that the market will recover. I think we'll see much higher prices. We will see, of course, much lower volumes, and that's the way it should be. I think there was a lot of overstatement of emission reductions in the past, but I think the net effect will be, as we've seen with some of our investees, the net effect is that there's more money flowing to these projects. We've seen prices north of $30, and I think, as I mentioned, the narrative around these projects, the sustainable development benefits, in addition to the carbon saving, are such that these are really good projects. And I think that carbon buyers want to be a part of that story as well.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ash. And we will move over to our next
Thank you so much.
We'll move over to our next speaker, Claudia Münch. Claudia is the manager of Biomasters, a company that is actively promoting alternatives to firewood and charcoal as cooking fuels. Claudia, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Christian. Hello, everyone from Kigali, Rwanda. Yep, as Christian said, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Biomasters. We produce pellet fuel in the west of Rwanda, and then we sell this for the purpose of cooking in the capital, Kigali. And we also provide cook stoves to go with that. Oops. To give you just a broad overview of where we are in terms of size, we have a capacity to produce around 1 ton per hour, so to serve roughly 10,000 households. With fuel, we serve mainly household customers, but we also have small restaurants and small commercial outlets that use that have a small cooking device that are our customers. We've produced 2,500 tons, to date. And in terms of biomass that we use, it's mainly wood. It's mainly wood waste, actually, and we also have partnerships with local carpentries, and we're building them up also with smallholder farmers that are selling wood for timber production, and then we take the waste from that. We currently have a funding round to finance our growth. We would like to build a new pellet plant. We're raising $2.6 million. And our strength is that we, of course, create green jobs, but we also set up a whole value chain, a whole sector in a country that is landlocked and that is really in need of a renewable energy source that doesn't have to be imported. A little bit about us. We established Biomasters in 2020, but nothing really happened in 2020 other than a business plan and a financial model, because it was the start of the COVID pandemic, and it was really, really hard to raise money. And so eventually when we got some, we could start a small pilot in 21, and then really since mid-2022, we are really on the market selling a product with proper customers. The management team is fully based in Rwanda. And as I said, we have one factory in the west of Rwanda, and our customers are mainly urban households, as well as small restaurants. And mainly to give you a bit of context, we have chosen to run this as a company to make it sustainable. So we do need to earn a profit. And so we decided to start in an urban context to replace charcoal as a source of cooking, because people are already spending cash every month on buying charcoal. So it's just replacing charcoal with a healthier, cleaner alternative. Our customers are mainly, or family size is mainly 5 people per household, sorry. And in terms of rolling this out, the challenge for us is that we have a very new product. People don't know it, so we need to do a lot of kind of awareness raising. And then we need to tell people why it is cheaper, and quantities are very different from cooking with charcoal than pellets. And also there's still a lot of misconception in terms of traditional cooking and traditional ways of cooking that we need to overcome. So really we have to do a lot of customer service and work around the actual sale in order to convince customers. So it's not quite as straightforward as it may be with more established technologies. We also have the challenge that charcoal today is ubiquitous. It's just available everywhere. So we have to make sure that we are present in really near our customers. So currently we have 5 own shops. We have 4 pop-up shops that are not open every day. And then we also work with third-party retailers that allow us to cover more area in terms of retail outlets. We do not run a pay-go model. We don't do consumer financing. We sell the stoves today. We used to do pay-go, and it was a really a strain on our small operations, and the asset, so to speak, the stove is often not valuable enough to run it through microfinance organizations. So the pay-go model was not the right choice for us. But now we're seeing really good results with cash sales, but at a slightly reduced price. We also have just completed a pilot regarding cooking for schools with pellets in collaboration with the WBA. And so that will be one next step for us to open up the market for further uses of pellets. And carbon credits as well are super valuable for us as well. We work with a carbon developer, a project developer called Fair Climate Fund, and they've really been instrumental in terms of pre-financing the whole setup of the methodology and guiding us through this. So Ash is absolutely right that this is more and more part of the core competencies that you need to have in this market. But in terms of results that we see, we've done a number of independent surveys, and the last one we did clearly showed that people see like the benefit in terms of affordability because it is cheaper than charcoal cooking with pellets. But moreover, they see that they really have a health benefit. They see the change in their health, and they also see the change in time savings. So we're trying to do everything we can to use our current customers to be our ambassadors and to just spread the word to say, like, if you've been doing this for a while, you can clearly see some benefits. Yeah, I also want to stress that the cooking market is fairly tough because there are in many markets now a lot of opportunities and a lot of different choices that customers can make, and they all have different advantages. So with pellets, there's often a misconception that we're still using biomass. So we always need to make sure that, we tell stakeholders and customers that there is an immense saving in terms of biomass because the efficiency in both production and usage is so high. In terms of our pitch, as I said, we're doing clean cooking still. But we will also get into the industrial and institutional sale of pellets to further diversify and broaden our reach. In terms of our fundraising journey, I mentioned that in 2020 nothing really happened. We eventually managed to, through friends and family, to get some angel investment on board and to start a small pilot. And then in 2021, we got our first small debt funding. It was crowdfunding, so that seems to be the easiest path to debt funding for smaller companies. And that has really helped us to scale and raise further funding because it meant we could buy more stoves, but it also meant that we could build up the creditworthiness history. So we could show other investors that we can pay our bills and we can pay our debt. In 2022 was really the year of grants for us, where we picked up a lot of grants that are impact focused and sector focused, with like RBO and Lend with Care and SNV, Osprey, just to name a few. But really since 22, since we had a pilot that we could show something that we could do, that really carried us through like a cash flow, I would say, not crunch, but a difficult period where it was just difficult to get larger debt or larger equity. So the equity that we did get into the business was from family and friends, and then we had a small regional institutional fund that also played the role of being the first institutional investor. 23 then saw more grant funding and debt funding, and then finally really this year was when things changed for us and we got our first larger institutional investor on board, Acumen, and now we're in the process of closing the round. So it took around like really 3 years to get anywhere in terms of equity, and Ash mentioned that equity is the most difficult type of capital to get into these markets. Often we're perceived high risk, and there are so many factors, but also the fluctuations in exchange rates and the depreciation of local values that really play a big part into making this more risky. So I thought maybe share with you what usually our expectations were when we started. And of course, you want to get a lot of equity in, you want to get some grants to make your startup cheaper. And then you also, of course, need some debt to build up a really good portfolio to get you to profitability and to then transition away from further equity rounds and more and more debt. And we knew it would be hard to lend or to borrow, sorry, in local currency, but we thought we could at least get some. And here is what the reality looked like. So equity was really hard to come by. We really have been living off grants for the most part to date. And we have been really careful with debts. And it was mainly crowdfunding that we were able to get. In terms of the currency funding, I mean, it was just almost impossible to get any local currency funding, because for banks, we don't have any collateral. So it's really the funders abroad that accept carbon credits as collateral, or crowdfunders that are willing to take a bigger risk that were an option. But then often the challenge is that you collect your revenues in local currency and you need to pay back in foreign currency, in hard currency. And so this actually makes the debt even more expensive. In the case of Rwanda, we saw 16-17% depreciation of the franc against the dollar, and almost 20%, I think, against the euro. So on top of interest, that makes a real difference for a startup. In terms of my experience of what funders are looking for, when we talk about equity, really you need to most of the time prove that you have scalable business model, that you can replicate what you do in other countries, or that you can really pick up the majority of the market with your solution. You need to have a clear path to profitability. And since we've seen a little bit of stagnation in the solar market, this profitability piece, I think, has become more and more important to equity investors. And they also need to see a path for a future exit. So either a sale to another investor, or a takeover, or a management buyout. An IPO is, of course, also an option, but I would say that is the rare exception. In terms of grants, a lot of the time grants want to see bottom of pyramid impact. You need to prove that you're reaching the poorest people. Also reach, so that you can tackle different markets or different types of settlements or communities. Often there are grants as well available for something innovative, for something new, trying something out. And also a scalable solution. So a lot of grants would also say, we'll help you to prove that this can scale. So already when you look at equity and grants, there are a lot of different areas that you have to cover and be good at with one business model. That's really tricky to do. And then you have the third component when you want to raise debt. You often need to prove that you have cash positivity, or that you have incomes that will cover the repayments of the loan. You often need a collateral. As I said, in Rwanda, it is very difficult to provide collateral that is other than like land or assets or buildings. It is often very difficult to provide that. They look for profitability, of course, or a clear path to quick profitability, and also your debt ratio. So it's really important, that companies really think around how much equity do we have, how much debt can we take, or if we take debt, can we then leverage the equity to go with this to make sure that our ratio stays okay. And then it's all about like positioning and matching, and looking at what the company wants to achieve, and where you match with investors' expectations or funders' expectations. From our experience in the African context, the impact investors were the clearest kind of match, because they look for a health impact or affordability impact, or climate impact, and this is absolutely what we do and what we can sell. Personal or private investors or private equity was also a little bit easier to pick up, as well as angels, friends and family. This very much, of course, depends on the context of who founds the business, but not so much in our case. And then, sometimes private companies that are maybe in your sector, maybe in the pellet industry for us, or in other kind of sectors, or the energy sector in a broader way, are an option to consider as investors, or to get equity from. Equity from crowdfunding is often very difficult, because crowdfunding equity providers prefer that you were registered in a country that they know. So Europe or the US are usually better for raising equity crowdfunding. But when you're registered in Africa, the risk is perceived too high, and the legal hoops you have to jump are also often far too high for the platform. So if you're looking to raise equity crowdfunding, you should really look at establishing a holding or a company in more established jurisdictions. In terms of grant funding, our experience is that there is a lot available for serving vulnerable communities. So refugee context or humanitarian context, there is money available for that. There's also a lot of grants that focus on innovations and pilots, and likewise scaling in new markets. Really, the grants that you want are the ones at the bottom for general operations, that you can use to scale your business the way you want. But those are very far and few between. So often they're tied to a mission or a project, or serving a particular community. And then in terms of debt funding, our experience again is crowdfunders are more willing to take risk, and have often also funders behind them that have a clear mission on funding certain benefits and certain outcomes. Carbon is unlocks a lot of funds, debt funds, because that can be a collateral, and then it's a bit like pre-financing, and then you can deliver the credits when you generate them. Sometimes private funds also provide debts or debt funds. You can also look at insurance companies for export financing or inventory financing. That also works. And as I said, local banks for us has proven really difficult, and we probably have to be at profitability or beyond profitability before that becomes an option. And almost last slide. So here are some of the partners that we work with. We've picked them up along the way. But if you're looking to establish a carbon project, Fair Climate Fund is a really good partner. They are owned by an NGO, so they're really mission aligned as well in terms of impact. Charm was the first crowdfunding platform that supported us. As well as grant funding from Luxtef or Annabelle, or Trade, or the Dutch government. So all played their part in making this a sizable operation today. And here's some of the faces of Biomasters. So I hope this was useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That was very, very useful and extremely interesting to follow your presentations. I can see that Ash has a question to you. Ash?
No, sorry, that was a mistake. But they were a great presentation. Thank you so much, Claudia.
Okay. Sorry about the glitch. Yeah. Right. Claudia, there was we are already a little bit advanced in the timing, so I can't pass on a lot of questions, but I think you answered a lot of questions anyways. But one was kind of mentioning the continued dependence on grants. Does that indicate that it is not possible to run a pellet cooking business, a pellet production, and pellet cooking business successfully without grants? Is this something that can work economically, at least after overcoming the first kind of startup phase?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a clear path to profitability. The challenge, I think, in the first years is that you need to set up a whole structure. There is often like no market, there's no supply as well. So you need to build both your supply and your demand. And then often like lead times for things are very long. You need to import everything. You need to pay in hard currency for your spare parts or for the cooking devices or the burners or for whatever you use. So you have a lot of, let's say, setup costs in order to build up your capacity. And at the same time, you're carrying, the challenge of convincing people that this is something new, but it's good. And you need to train people on how to use it. It's a lot of behavioral change. So I'd say without grants, it's very difficult to overcome the setup phase. But once you are at a certain capacity and you are at a certain scale, this is absolutely worth it. It just beats so many other solutions that are around. And you can be really price competitive with pellets.
That's what I find so fascinating, that this is actually a solution that makes economic sense, both for the producers, but also for the consumers. And the consumers really spend less money on fuel than they did before, and they have a much better cooking system. So, but indeed, the startup in a situation where this has not been introduced before is hugely challenging. Thank you so much, Claudia. And I think we'll continue with our next speaker, and this is Maud from FAO. She is regional lead for Africa and the Near East, and will discuss how the Global Environmental Facility can help supporting bioenergy initiatives in developing countries. Maud, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me and see me properly. Perfect. So, well, good afternoon, and I see to a very, very much global audience. And thank you very much also for inviting FAO to join this conversation on financing the bioenergy transition. I do assume that everybody knows FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, but maybe just to remind, we're a specialized agency of the United Nations systems, and we do lead the global efforts or international efforts to end hunger. I'm sitting in the Office for Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment, OCB, in the GEF coordination unit. And that's what I like to talk about briefly today. It's the Global Environment Facility, before sharing a couple of examples of our successes from our FAO GEF portfolio. And I'd like to highlight very much FAO's holistic, people-centered approach to bioenergy projects, even though, of course, these investments are very much focused on supporting a net zero transition. So a few words about the Global Environment Facility. The GEF is the financial mechanism for several multilateral environmental agreements, including the Rio Conventions, as you can see on this slide. And that means that the GEF helps countries to meet their environmental commitments that they have made under these different conventions. Through its funding, grants mostly, the GEF promotes activities that protect the environment while also contributing very much to sustainable development more broadly. So the GEF was established already nearly 35 years ago, and it has since become the largest multilateral fund dedicated to addressing global environment and climate challenges. It has disbursed over $25 billion and mobilized over $150 billion in co-financing. And it supports projects and programs in areas such as biodiversity, conservation, climate change mitigation, adaptation, land degradation, neutrality, and so on.
Sorry, Odd, did you want to share slides?
You don't see my slides?
No, we don't see your slides.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I thought that you could see my screen. Sorry.
We saw you, but not your screen.
You can see it now?
Yes, yes. Please go to presentation mode.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope you can see everything properly now. So I was mentioning about the GEF. So it provides grants, as I said already, to projects and programs that align with its mission of fostering environmental sustainability. And these projects and programs often involve partnerships between governments, but also international development organizations or financing partners, nonprofits, profits, private sector as well. So the different presenters before could very well be partners of the GEF on projects and programs. And why is FAO in this picture? Well, the GEF operates through GEF agencies, accredited agencies, as its secretariat purposely remained small. And FAO is one of 18 such accredited agencies. These agencies are therefore the operational arm of the GEF partnership, providing project proponents with the development or support with the development and the supervision of their GEF projects and programs. So FAO joined this partnership back in 2006 and has become the second largest GEF agency, managing a global portfolio of projects that is worth $2 billion and mobilizing $13 billion in co-financing. So part of this funding, but of course not exclusively, supports sustainable bioenergy initiatives and considering its role in transforming agri-food systems, restoring ecosystems, and so on. So considering the role of bioenergy at the agriculture and environment nexus. Okay, here we go. So the GEF has made significant contributions to sustainable bioenergy, which is crucial for achieving, of course, net zero growth and fulfilling the Paris Agreement, linking back to these conventions. But bioenergy is not only important for climate goals that was mentioned by previous speakers, it can also support development, for instance, by improving access to clean and affordable energy, by contributing to the conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems, by promoting economic development in rural areas. And FAO's, and by extension, its FAO GEF bioenergy project, portfolio of projects, embraces these complexities and opportunities and really aim to develop bioenergy in a sustainable and in an inclusive way. And let me share just a few examples of how we have done this, some successes from our portfolio. And let me begin with the Hazer project in Azerbaijan, which focuses on understanding bioenergy opportunities and creating the conditions and enabling environment, also from a policy viewpoint, for large-scale bioenergy implementation. So Azerbaijan is one of the world's top hazelnut producers, and it offers significant potential for biofuel production from hazelnut residues. However, the main challenge is the cost of bioenergy. As fossil fuels are really cheap, they're available in large scale in Azerbaijan. So for bioenergy to gain traction, therefore, local companies need to find ways to make it more competitive, affordable, especially considering the country's low electricity prices. On top of that, the current energy system does not help Azerbaijan meet its climate commitments, nor to support local development. Therefore, the HAZER project helped overcome some of these barriers by evaluating the potential of hazelnut residues as a source of sustainable bioenergy. The project estimated through in-depth studies that by 26, pruning residues could reach 50,000 tons, husks 83,000 tons, and so on. So if these residues are collected and used efficiently, and the project demonstrated how this could be on a demonstration basis, they could provide a viable alternative to fossil fuels, therefore contributing to reduced greenhouse gas emissions, boosting local development, and so on. So the success of this transition depends on private sector engagement, its investments, its expertise, and therefore the project also did invest in mobilizing multiple partners and providing data and information for informed decision-making. Another example is from our FAO's work, in Malawi, also very much demonstrating this holistic people-centered approach that I was hinting at before. So in Malawi, the Miombo and Mopane woodlands, they do provide vital resources to rural communities for their lives, for their livelihoods. But they are degraded, very much degraded due to agriculture, land clearing for wood fuel, and climate change. So to tackle these interconnected challenges, our Dryland Sustainable Landscapes project in Malawi provides integrated solutions, and it embeds a sustainable energy transition into a broader development approach that delivers multiple benefits, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions, conserving biodiversity, improving livelihoods, supporting ecosystem services. In particular, our Malawi projects aims to provide livelihoods and to diversify the economy by promoting sustainable land management practices and by developing green value chains for key products, agricultural products and woodland products. And the project adopted the IFAS approach, which is the Integrated Food and Energy Systems approach. And this method really optimizes land and biomass use by intercropping food and energy crops, providing sustainable fuel, but without adding pressure on the land. The project promotes the use of pigeon peas to be grown alongside maize and groundnuts. And why pigeon peas? Well, they are drought tolerant, they improve soil health through nitrogen fixation, and therefore they help improve agricultural productivity. But pigeon peas also produce valuable biomass for energy, therefore reducing the need for wood fuel and helping conserve forests from land clearing. And they can also actually be a good source of fodder. In sum, IFS contributes to land degradation neutrality, biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation, but also stronger and more resilient communities. So there are many more other examples of our FAO-GEF collaboration supporting bioenergy adoption at scale. Maybe I won't be going through all of these, but in Vietnam, for instance, the GEF projects are promoting biogas technology adoption in poor rural farming communities to manage waste and to contribute to the energy transition and to secure actually energy for rural poor. In Ethiopia, GEF-funded projects are introducing improved cook stoves, providing rural women with cleaner energy options and helping to reduce deforestation. And these are just a few examples of how the GEF, through its partnerships with FAO and others, is supporting countries in adopting sustainable bioenergy solutions that contribute to both environment and climate goals, but also development goals. And the examples that I've provided also illustrate how FAO integrates sustainable bioenergy into broader environment strategies, as we prioritize really people-centered projects that address environment and development needs, leading to more sustainable and resilient future. And then here, just a few resources for you to consult if you wish to learn more about the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, or about our FAO GEF portfolio of work beyond bioenergy as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was extremely interesting and very valuable for all of our audience. So just to remind the audience, whatever you have been seeing today will be online shortly. So on the World Bioenergy Association's website, we will publish both the presentations, but also the recording from this webinar. So in case you are looking for the contacts or specific details, you're welcome to come back to our website and to either look at the whole webinar again or download also the presentations that were made. With this, and as I don't see a lot of questions right now, I would like to move on to our last speaker, Tom Walsh. He is the president of Renitech. He will provide a project developer's perspective on securing financing for bioenergy projects. Tom, the floor is yours.
Christian, can you see me clearly as well?
We can see you clearly, but we can't see your slides yet. So please share.
That's very fine, very fine. Now you see the slides, yeah?
Yes, just put them into presentation mode. Yes.
Now it's in presentation mode.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you all, and it's great to be here today. And I enjoyed my fellow speakers' presentations. I'm going to take it a little bit from the project development, project finance perspective, and have been working in this area, I would say, for almost 20 years at this stage, both in mainly in Europe and also across sub-Saharan Africa. So let's see here. So I thought I might start with the challenges and the requirements, and I'll just run through these a little bit. I mean, some of the things that investors look for, or funders, whether they be debt funders, when you're trying to build bioenergy infrastructure, whether it's a pellet plant, whether it's a combined heat and power plant, or whether it's a pyrolysis unit. These are the things that kind of come up on the radar. I mean, your site that you decide to locate in is extremely important. You need to have the infrastructure around it, whether it's roads, rail, water supply, water treatment, and stable power supply. That's a critical issue that you need to consider. And of course, also, if you're dealing with a plant that needs 20,000 tons or more of biomass, different types of biomass, it can be residues, or it can be forest residues, or it can be other kinds of biomass. You know, the availability of the biomass is a critical point, and availability over the entire time of the year, and also the cost, the landed cost, the logistics cost, the cost that it is at your gate, so to speak. and that includes the transportation costs. So logistics, typically you do like to have your available biomass within perhaps a 30-kilometer radius of the actual plant itself. And then, of course, things change over time. So one needs to take that into account. If you're building a plant that's going to last for 20 years, you need to consider, there can be changes in availability of biomass, and how do you deal with that point? And then investors will ask you for lots of documentation, feasibility studies. You need to have your environmental impact assessment. If they're funders from funding a project in West Africa, whether it's Ghana or whether it's Cote d'Ivoire, they'll want the local environmental impact assessment, but they may also want the strategic environmental impact assessment that will look at issues in terms of biodiversity, and on the social side, in terms of, for example, how is the biomass collected? Is there any child labor involved? So there's lots of different issues that you have to consider. There's the permits that you need to have in place, both for the build phase and also fire permits and other permits that they may ask. Yeah, they will ask for the front end engineering in terms of the design of the facility and plant. And then what are the offtake agreements? Ideally, a debt funder likes both a debt and equity funder. When it's from a project finance perspective, they like to see that the agreements, offtake agreements, are long-term. In other words, you have agreements over a period of years. If you're providing heat, they also like to see that it is that is in place. And then you have a wide variety of different equity and debt options, which I think was brought up in the earlier presentations. And whether it's impact investment, or whether it is grant financing, or whether it's debt financing, all of them have their different requirements, and they all have their different sweet spots. And there's quite a lot that is being invested in Europe at this point in time in the bioenergy sector. And some of them, will be investing because it's from an electricity perspective. And some of them are investing purely heat and purely in Europe. So also it can also be location specific. The fund may be focused on Africa, or it may be focused just on Europe and the US. So that's a little bit of a maze that everybody has to work through. And it's worth your while spending some time looking at that and identifying those parties which are more favorable towards your particular business. You probably, if you're looking for equity and you're looking for debt, it's probably worth your while, rather than putting in a lot of work with an individual investor. It's better to take a quick call up front early on, explain your business and what you're trying to do in fairly simple terms, and see, does it fit within their frame? And if it fits within their frame, then you can take the discussion further. I would say it's important to be patient, and it does take time when you're looking for investment. It's to be recommended that you can run your business for a while without investment coming in. That you keep your burn rate at a very reasonable rate, so that you can survive for a longer period of time. Grant applications are great, and there's many different types of grant finance that's available. Typically, if you're looking at from a research or innovation perspective, it also is to be recommended to look at which consortia you're actually going to work with. That can also take some time to put that in place. It's to be recommended if somebody has been successful that you work with people that typically, if you're talking from an EU research perspective, it's always wise to have the lead applicant who has done it a number of times before. It saves you some time. Carbon finance was discussed a little bit earlier, and in the last COP, they did agree to terms and conditions around Article 6.4. So Article 6.2 and 6.4 tends to be rolling out now, which is on a bilateral basis. For example, the Swedish Energy Agency has a fund of about, I think it's about 100 million euros, which needs to be committed between now, 2 projects in the next before 2030. So that structure is there. The voluntary market, just to say a little bit on the voluntary market. For example, when it comes to biochar credits, 90% of all voluntary credits last year, which was about $600 million, was on biochar credits. So there is, everything is not equal when it comes to the carbon finance market. And those are at quite high prices. I would say 95% of all projects, when it comes to bioenergy infrastructure, are before the financial investment decision. So you need fairly good supporters, project sponsors, to deal with all this documentation that needs to be in place for the financial investment decision. And then, of course, availability, scalability, and sustainability are the key issues. Just to talk a little bit about this, about beaker to bucket to barrel to bunker, which is a little bit the innovation cycle and the regulation and standards, and also feedstock and technology and the investment and implementation. All of these levels have different investment requirements, and they have different. Typically, the beaker and bucket, that's where you're going to be looking for your grant financing. So it's where you do your initial testing. For example, you may be looking at rubber nuts in Côte d'Ivoire to make biodiesel, and you need to do a proof of concept around that. You need to produce your first number of liters of biodiesel. Then it tends to be grant financing. It's not really investors or debt finance that's going to provide that kind of financing to you. And we still have a lot of, I would say, residues and crops across the global south, where we still need to do quite a bit of innovation to bring them into biomass use. And I'm talking very much here about on the biofuel side. I know we have, in the earlier conversation, we have been talking very much about wood and fuel use from a biomass perspective, but also from a biofuel perspective. When we get into the barrel level, you're into like $50 million investment. You're into that big long list that I showed you in the on the first slide, both to get your equity financing and also your debt financing. And then bunker is where we need large scale volumes, and we have changing regulations. We have changing regulations in relation to sustainable aviation fuel and also maritime fuel. And there we estimate that, for example, in the with the small increases of biofuel requirements in terms of the shipping fleets between now and 2030, there will be about $18 billion additional that will need to be invested in biofuel infrastructure to meet the requirements from the maritime industry. So this can be a useful slide to guide you. And also, I should say that bucket to barrel, the requirements change dramatically in terms of what the funder is looking for. The funder will be very much looking at the return on investment when it comes to and the financial model when it gets into the bunker and barrel area. So I thought it might be interesting to share just what a funder is looking for. So they'll ask you for what kind of technology you're using, your project location, your baseline scenario, the energy supply to be replaced, the CO2 savings removals that you're generating on a per unit basis or on a per month basis or a per year basis, the project costs, the expected project costs, the state of your project implementation and financing. Do you have other financing? Do you have grant financing? Your business model, what is your business model, your sensitivity analysis around your business model. Obviously, if you're looking towards impact investors, they are quite concerned about the environmental impact, but also the socioeconomic impacts. And obviously, in when you start to scale bioenergy projects, you start to generate significant amounts of jobs in the local value chain. I mean, if we're talking sub-Saharan Africa, Cote d'Ivoire produces about 30 million tons of residues on an annual basis. Uganda produces about 16 million tons. So there's lots of scope for adding value to different residues in different ways. And then a key also is your local partners. Who are your local partners? Because typically a lot of these projects are consortia based, and how well do you know them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I thought I might show a different financing structure just to give you an indication of something that maybe can be used as well. And this is an export financing structure. It's I mean, all European countries provide it. The US provides it. India provides it. And typically these projects are set up in special purpose vehicles. You have the technology supply, which is a lump sum turnkey, which would be able to provide the warranties towards the SPV, the civil work, which is done locally. And then you have these institutions. In the case of Sweden, it's an institution called EKN, which provides the export guarantee to the local bank or to the international bank, whether it's Barclays or whether it's Standard Chartered. There's numerous different ones, and they provide about 85% of the lump sum turnkey contract. It's a way of financing your business. Generally, the interest rates are quite competitive. When it comes to bioenergy projects, we always want to look at a very competitive interest rate, because the returns, I mean, you can look at a lot of bioenergy projects, but your internal rate of return is going to be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15%, but you're not going to be in the venture returns of 25 or 30%, unless you're doing something very special or very particular, which is a very value add chemical. But by and large, that is not the case. So I mentioned here the offtake agreements need to be in place. So the heat purchase agreement for whoever that is. In the case of Sweden and the Nordic, it would be a district heating company. If you're talking other parts of the world, which are maybe hotter climates, it could be a food processing company, and of course that needs to be long term. And then you want to have a lump sum turnkey contract for your biogas or pyrolysis plant that has the warranty, so that you can get the guarantees. Maybe I've explained that a little bit, but it's another form of financing. It can be interesting for people to use it. It's generally quite competitive, and it is used for sustainable infrastructure. So maybe just to summarize a little bit from my perspective in terms of working with the investment of these particular projects, some of the key points are your cost and availability of biomass, and that it's secure, your logistics. They say that logistics in Africa accounts for 0.5% of moving of goods. So in sub-Saharan Africa, it's even more important issue. Offtake agreements need to be in place. Grant applications. Remember that if you spend time on grants, it does take your time. So you should maybe do a little bit of due diligence in terms of looking at how much competition is for the grant. If you can find grants where there's less competition, you know, it's increasing your chances to get the grant. So always look at that as well. I mean, if there's a grant application and there's 5,000 applications, then you know it's extremely competitive. But if it's a grant application and there's 20 applications, then obviously you're already up and you have a 5% chance. And if you're shortlisted, you may go and have a 30% chance. So it's your time. Your time is important. And look to the expert consortia so that it can facilitate you winning the grant application, because you're going to spend your time on it. Carbon finance, it was discussed a little bit earlier, and it is, I think, in the clean cooking space, the real-time MRV systems have become quite important, I would say. Do remember that you have multiple finance options, and that in its own right can take you a lot of time. So take your time and eliminate those that you think will not provide you with finance, and only spend time on those that are very close to your business. I can say that I would say that where I have gotten finance in the past, the investor or the debt funder was very closely aligned to what we wanted to do. It was almost like when we went into the meeting, they were looking for that type of project or proposal, and it just matched them perfectly. And in my experience anyway, that is where you get your funding. So it's, of course, you have to knock on quite a lot of doors in order to get the financing that you need. But you do get better at that over time, because you know multiple investors, multiple debt providers, and you say, well, this debt funder or this equity provider, it's likely that this deal will be of interest to them. So just to say, sorry, I'm fixing up my slides here. Be patient, it takes time. 95% of projects are before the financial investment decisions, so bear that in mind. And from today in the impact world and the corporate world, I spelled scalability wrong there, my apologies. Availability, scalability, and sustainability is key. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. Also very, very instructive and very helpful for project developers to consider your lists. So I'm sure some of them will download the presentations we saw today. There was one question, and that was, to what degree is biomass feedstock security of supply and feedstock quality really a key criteria for funding?
I would say the problem if you take this renewable energy or bioenergy area is that it's very easy to understand the solar panel and to understand the wind turbine. But when it comes to bioenergy and feedstock, a lot of investors feel very insecure because it has this variability, and they find it hard to feel comfortable with it. So one of the challenges that you have if you're looking for funding is that you ideally want to find those investors and debt funders that have a certain understanding of bioenergy, because they are more likely to assist you to invest. I mean, there are a lot of funds and so on that won't invest in bioenergy. So you want, but there are others that are very favorable. So you want to work with them because they have that knowledge and they have that understanding. Bioenergy is it's an animal of its own right in some sense, and it is more, and also, you know, you have many different types of feedstock. You have many different types of technologies that can process biomass. So it's not, you know, it's not one thing. It's multiple. It's multifaceted, and you have to spend your time explaining that to the investor or funder. Ideally, you want that funder to have some knowledge or understanding. And one of the things, I can tell a story. We put in a grant application, and we put in the application, and the funder decided to come out to do a site visit. And they told us on the site visits, you know, we didn't understand your application at all. We didn't understand what you wrote. So I think it's very important as well that if you're in the field and you're technical, you need to write things so that your child could read it and understand it, and be graphical, use diagrams and use pictures to explain. Very important, because the reviewer that's on the other side, you cannot assume, this is on the grant application side in particular now, you cannot assume that they are coming from a technical perspective or an engineering perspective. So make it nice and understandable and pedagogic. That would be one of my advices as well.
Thanks, Tom. I'm sure that's a very good advice. I would like to even add one more thing. I mean, as you mentioned, bioenergy has its complexities, and to understand these complexities is not only a task for the funder, but also for the project proposer.
Yes.
If you want to go for a pellet project, you need to profoundly understand what it means to do that. What kind of requirements are there in terms of the quality of the product? What kind of equipment suppliers are there? What kind of different raw material properties do you need to pay attention to, etc., etc.? So it is a complex thing to do, even though it's very rewarding if you manage properly. And maybe just to close this webinar down, WBA is here to support project developers, to support the understanding of what it takes to do bioenergy properly, and to understand the complexities that are associated with using it in a sustainable way. So I would like to thank all of the presenters very much. It was truly interesting today. To all the participants, the presentations as well as the recording from this webinar will be online, and we will be happy to see you again in one of our next webinars. Thanks to all of you, and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Tim.